In this lesson, we will continue to look at manipulators. Beginning with a program that's already partially written, I have increased the resolution to 125% so that it's easy to see. And over in the Solution Explorer, here's the name of the file that I have chose to use. I'm going to close the Solution Explorer window so we'll have more room, more space to watch, to see the code. Now, in this instance, this program, we're going to look at additional input and output using cin and cout, and we'll be looking at some additional manipulators. The left just means that you can justify the output in the field that you chose to the left. Right is the default. It always will justify to the right, but if you've chosen left, then you can go back to right by using right. We've seen set precision already in a previous video, and we've seen set width, and we've also seen fixed, but this time we're going to add in the setfill manipulator and perhaps another one as we proceed through this example. I've already declared some variables, and one thing that you may have seen for the first time is the declaration of using the type string. Okay, string is a special feature. It's an entire library that's available in C++ that was not available in ordinary standard C that predates C++. And just to give you a comparison to that, the way that we used to do strings in C was to declare a character array, which is what I'm going to do briefly here. So you had a type character, and we had something like name, and we gave it a certain number of characters. And then we could set that to a string, which we could type in like this. So this kind of string, character, which I call a character array, is referred to as a C string, and we'll talk about those much later on. But this is kind of cumbersome. Using this approach is a kind of cumbersome thing to do, and it comes with all kinds of problems when we're trying to compare things that are type strings and so on. So with C++, we have a type called string that we can use, and we have a huge library of functions that we can use to manipulate those strings. So that is what I'm doing here. So I'm going to erase this C string for the time being, and we'll come back to that later in the course. So I have first name and last name declared to be a type string. The character, single character for the variable initial, an unsigned integer for an employee number, float for wage and hours, and double for pay. So what we're going to do with this example is to presume that we're going to type in some information about an employee. So we'll output to the screen employee record database, and note here I've used a \n, a couple of them, to skip 2 lines, and those occur within the double quotes. So this is another way that you can use to skip lines, and alternately to using the end line that we see down here. So \n works, and end line also works to go to a new line and give you a carriage return. Now, following that, we have a couple of statements that will be printed to the screen with the cout, which just says, enter the following information for each employee. So we're going to type in last name, first name, middle initial, ID number, wage, and the hours worked. Okay, then we'll skip a couple of lines, and now we're going to output this stuff. Okay, now given all that stuff written, all those prompts to the screen, how can we input this information? Now, if you were familiar with the scanf and printf from earlier courses, then you know that we have to use what we call the field specifiers. But with C++, we can simply use cin and the insertion operator, and we list the variables in the order that we want them. Okay, so last name, we just put the variable for that, okay, last name. And then we put the insertion operator again, and the insertion operator goes between each variable that we want to read something in for or into. Okay, first name is next. Then we follow by the middle initial. The variable is initial for that one. Then we have the ID number, which the variable is called employee number, employee underscore NO. And we just continue to list these out on the same line. Okay, the wage is called wage. And the last thing is hours worked, which is just hours, and then we terminate that with a semicolon. Alright, so to input information from the keyboard in C++ is quite easy. You just list the name of the variable, and it's not necessary to be concerned about the type that these variables are. So in this input, we have some strings. We have a couple of strings. We have a character. We have an unsigned integer, and then we have a couple of floats, all on the same line, and we didn't have to designate the types of those. So the system already understands that the types for those variables. Now, after we have input all this information, now let's just write this back out to the screen using cout, and we'll look at some of our manipulators to do that. First of all, let's skip a couple of lines. So we'll do cout end line here, and another end line. So that will just give us some space between the input values and our output that we want to have. But the insertion operator needs to point to the left for cout. So let's change my error. Okay, now we're going to just list these. Okay, now what I want to do here is to fill in some information and give it the title of what this thing is. So let's do cout, and we'll use a character string here. Okay, last name colon double quote, and then last name, right, followed by a carriage return. So these will all go on the same separate lines, ENDL. And then I'm just going to go down and output all these things. Okay, so cout, first name. Oops, I need a double quote there. And I don't want a space over here. So my typing is terrible. I'm sure you're accustomed to that by now. And we'll print out first name, the string variable, and an inline. And I need to put an ENDL up there. Okay, continuing, we will output the initial. End line, okay, cout, and continuing down the line, we have employee number next. Employee underscore NO, and an end line. Okay, the wage per hour. Which is just simply the variable wage. And the last thing that we input was the hours worked. Which is the variable hours. Alright, so that reflects back to the screen all of those 6 items that we just input. Now let's suppose we want to go ahead and produce something from this, like we have a variable for the pay. So let's compute the pay. So the pay is just going to be equal to the wage times the hours. So that will be something that we can output as well. So we'll calculate the pay. Let's do a cout, and let's go to a new line, and let's write pay for the week, and let's output a $sign. Okay, then a double quote, and pay, and finally an end line. Alright, so this just reflects, this program just shows you again some simple input and output, but in this case we are using a mixed type of input. Lots of different types are being read in. Alright, so let's make sure this program works. So we will go to the build. The program has compiled. Now let's execute it. Now the window appears on the screen, so we get all the prompts. Enter the following information, so we need to type all that information in. So let's suppose our last name is Smith. Okay, the first name is Randy. Middle initial is R. ID number 2345. The wage, let's suppose that's $20 an hour. And the number of hours worked is 40. Okay, so we can just type that information in. And when I hit enter, then the information is input, and the program proceeds, and we see what the output looks like. So in this example, we have the information echoed back to the screen, one item per line. So we see the last name, first name, initial, number, hours, the wage per hour, hours worked, and then the pay for the week. So that shows you how to do the CIN and the COUT. But now let's close this down, and let's look at how we can modify this to make the output look a little bit better. I want to use the set width manipulator first down here. So I want each of these titles, these things that are in red, these string constants, I want all of those to be kind of consistent. So I want them all to be output in a 20 character field. So to do that, I need to do a setw 20 before each one. Now quickly I want to show you that when you are using this manipulator set width, that it only is in effect for the very next item that shows up. So let's build this program and demonstrate that. Okay, the program's compiled. I'll close that window. Let's run the program. And we need to type in some information again. So let's do last name. So that's Jones. Okay, Michael. Middle initial R. ID number 2578. Wage $20. Hours worked 40. And then we see the output. Okay, so the last name we have set width of 20. So you can see last name colon space Jones. That's right justified. And if you counted those carefully, you'd see there's a total of 20 print positions. But the first name, the initial, and everything else is still left justified. So, and it's left justified, and it's only in a field of the minimum it takes. So that shows you then that if you want to set the field width using set width, you have to use it prior to everything that you want to output. Okay, so let's move on. And what I want to do is to set the width for all of these. So to make this go a little faster, I'm just going to make a copy of the set width 20 in the insertion operator. And I'm going to paste this before each one of the items in the output. Okay, so now each one of these items has an output field width of 20. All right, so now let's build it. Once again, it compiled correctly, so let's look at the output. We need to type in the information again. Now, when I type in that information and I hit enter, then everything is output in for these string constants. All of these occupy a field width of 20. So they are aligned. Now, I did leave off a colon for employee number, but I'll put that back in. So the information that was entered now is all aligned one atop the other, Jones, Mike, R, and so on. Now, this doesn't look so great either. What I would like to do is to have a 20 width field, but I would like these to be left justified. So how can we do that? The way that we do that is to use the left manipulator. So we only so we do a COUT and we type in left. All right. So that means that items are going to be left justified when we when we output them. Now let's build this, and we can experiment. We can determine, do I need to do cout left for every single thing, or is this one of those manipulators that once you set it, it stays put? It doesn't change until you set it back to right. Right. Well, the proof is in the experiment, so let's build this. Okay, compilation is complete. Let's run it. Type in the information. Jones, Mike, initial R, ID number, I forget each time. I'll just put in some number here. Okay, the wage is 20, the hour is 40. And this time, the output looks pretty nice. Okay, so we have now output in a 20 space field just these things, just the string constants that are between quotes and are in red. And then following that, we have the actual data that we input from the keyboard. Now, that shows you that if you use the left manipulator once, then everything is left justified in the field that you chose until you change it back to right. So you have cout left, and to change it back to right justified, you can do a cout right. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can manipulate the way that these outputs look. Say, for example, wage per hour is 20. Well, that would be nice if we could make that look more like $1 and cents kind of output. So let's see what we can do to make that happen. Now we want to output the wage per hour showing a dollars and cents format. Now to do that, we can do a couple of things here. First of all, we want to have 2 digits to the right of the decimal. So we can do cout, set precision to 2. And so that will give us in the following numbers that are real numbers. It'll give us a 2 digits to the right of the decimal. Now, wage per hour colon, if I want to see a $, I just need to put a $, right here as part of this string. So that's a quick fix for that. All right, now let's build this and see what that looks like. The build is complete. Let's run it. And type in the information. $20 an hour and 40. So notice I entered 20 and 40 for the wage and the hours worked. When this is output, then I did not get what I wanted here. I forgot to do something, so let's go back and change that. The thing that I failed to do here was to indicate that I wanted this to be a real number, and I don't want it as scientific notation. I want it to be fixed. So I need to do cout and then use the manipulator fixed to indicate that this is a real number. And I don't want scientific notation. And I want to set precision to be 2. So now with that added, then let's go back and repeat this. Okay, I fixed the problem that I had. So when we want to output something and we want to output it using to get a real number with no scientific notation, then fixed means to output a real number, and set precision means we're going to have 2 digits to the right of the decimal. And I fixed another little error. The output for the $, needs to go here. Okay, so that will allow the $, to be immediately next to the value that we have for wage. Now let's run our program and see what the output looks like. And I paused the video to type in the information so you wouldn't have to wait to see that. So now I'll just hit enter. And now the output looks like this. So we have the, notice that we have the $, 20, a period, and then we have the 2 digits to the right of the decimal. Now once you set precision, it stays set until you change it to something else. So the wage per hour shows a precision of 2, the hours worked a precision of 2, and the pay for the week also has a precision of 2 at the very bottom. The last thing I want to show in this video is that you can use a character other than a space to fill in empty space on the screen, and that is called the setfill. So let's, instead of putting spaces after this information here, the strings showing all of these items, let's fill that in with another character, and let's just use a period for that. So at any point prior to outputting this information, we can use this setfill. So we can use cout, and the manipulator is called setfill. And then in parentheses, you specify the character that you want used instead of a space. So we use a single quote, and I want a period, and you close that with a single quote, right paren and a semicolon. So the character that you use goes here, and it can only be a single character. And notice that you use the single quotes here as well. So you can pick any character that you want to use as a fill character, an asterisk, a dash, or whatever. The default is a blank. So let's go ahead and compile this and look at the output we get. Again, to save time, I have already entered the information. I'll hit enter, and then here you can see that the fill character is now a period. So that's the result of the setfill manipulator, and that comes in really handy. So if you wanted to create a table of contents or something like that with dots instead of spaces, it's very easy to do. So this is the final output that you see for this example, and we will look at some more examples of manipulators in the next video.